In rising to speak on the budget, one would naturally extend one's good wishes to the new finance minister for his heroic efforts in tackling a situation which was both difficult and complicated. It is not my intention to go into the details of the budget or even to touch upon various matters of policy concerning it. I would only like to refer to a few important aspects of the various problems which have arisen on consideration of the budget. Personally speaking, I welcome the decision of the finance minister to take a comprehensive view of both the revenue account and the capital budget account in assessing the correct financial position of the country. But I cannot congratulate him in the manner in which he proposes to meet the deficit in the capital budget account. The net result of what he proposes to do will be to reduce the cash balances to about rupees 42 crores. So far as taxation is concerned, my honorable friend spoke with considerable hesitation because I know much of what he was saying he did not mean. But so far as the taxation program is concerned, it does hit the middle and the poor people. The proportion of indirect taxation has come to nearly 60%. None knows better than the finance minister that the normal distribution between direct and indirect taxation in any progressive country would be about 50-50. The darkest spot in the budget is that we are almost reaching the end of our resources. If I could think aloud, there is the possibility of the death duty being imposed, but that matter has been shelved. I know there are difficulties. You may impose a land tax throughout the country. You may re-invoke the salt duty, though there may be sentimental objection to that. You have followed the policy of prohibition in trying to pursue an ideal which has landed you in disaster in many of the states and in the entire economy of the whole country. Government has taken advantage of many windfalls. Government was entitled to it just as it has suffered under the impact of many natural calamities. If we look at our increased revenue from exports, the finance minister rightly pointed out in his speech that one should not try to depend on these large exports. They are due to the worsening of the international situation. So far as stockpiling is concerned, I would like to know from the finance minister whether government has any plan for stockpiling in the interests of India. Supposing war breaks out and the situation worsens, it will be necessary for government to depend on many vital things which the country itself does not produce. I did not discover in the budget any plan for spending any money for a planned stockpiling in the interests of India's national economy. I do not know if there are any secret plans going on which the finance minister has not disclosed. I shall now refer to the Indo-Pak Agreement. I will not go into details at the present moment. I may have time to do so in the course of the discussion on demands for grants. But frankly speaking, so far as this agreement is concerned, nothing could have been more humiliating for India than the manner in which this agreement was effected. If India wanted to have such an agreement, India could have made it long ago on much better terms and saved a lot of humiliation and misery to millions of people. But India deliberately wanted to pursue a particular line of policy which was consistent with our national interest, and overnight that policy was changed. Whether it was due to far-sighted or short-sighted statesmanship or due to defeatism or cowardice, I do not know. But it has left a bad taste in the mouths of all because the country feels that it has been let down by its government. So far as the economic policy of the government is concerned, I hope we shall have an opportunity of discussing this matter when the details of the budget will be taken up. But food, cloth, and shelter are the three main things on which government's failure is colossal and on which the country expects a new lead from the government if it is to function with the willing confidence and cooperation of the people. Today, we are living in very difficult circumstances. I have no desire merely to blame the government or accuse the government because we are trying to solve a problem of a magnitude which perhaps has had no parallel in any other part of the world. But the way in which government is pursuing its policy is not the way in which a situation will be found. Somehow, the gap between the government and the people is increasing rapidly day by day. It is no use government blaming the activities of particular groups. There may be such parties who may create trouble. Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, before adjournment, I was dealing with the question of selection and appointment of judges and the part the government was playing in the matter. I pointed out how the government had been discriminatory in such matters. I would beg to you to ask the Honorable Minister not to evade the issue that I have raised because there is a tendency on the part of the government to evade certain issues involving principles whenever they have no straight answers to give. Even if some answers could be given, they do not feel like giving those answers for reasons best known to them. Now, my allegation there has been this, and to the best of my knowledge, everything is true. Of course, part of it can be corroborated from the Election Commission as to whether a defeated Congress candidate had been appointed as a judge of the High Court of Calcutta, and the other part of it can be ascertained by the government from the persons concerned there, that is to say, the former Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court. Now, the point that I want to make is this. When the Chief Justice had recommended somebody, that recommendations should not have been set aside on the basis of a police report. A CBI sub-inspector certainly is not a higher personality in our setup than the Chief Justice of a High Court. And yet the recommendation was rejected, as everybody knows, on the basis of the police report generally drawn up by CBI sub-inspectors of the rhyme. Now, sir, in the matter of selection of High Court judges, extreme care should be taken so that no extraneous considerations come in. Therefore, sir, I would suggest that in the matter of selection and appointment of judges, the whole thing should be left to the judiciary itself, to the Chief Justice of the High Court, and finally to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. It is possible for the government to delegate these powers to them. Now you will say that there are certain administrative considerations and other things. They can come into the picture if it is a question of appointment of an officer or a district judge by promotion to the High Court bench, but in other matters, the High Courts generally know what is to be done. The President, being the head of the state, comes into the picture and the administration is involved in that way. But the Cabinet or the Council of Ministers should never enter into the picture as far as such matters are concerned. Let there be some discussion about such matters so that we can arrive at certain arrangements. Why I say this is because otherwise there will be no protection against discrimination, there will be no protection against mischoice, and there will be no protection against certain extraneous considerations influencing such appointments. Now, sir, I am not at all making any point against the Congress government as such. I am only dealing with the question of principle. It may be a Congress government or it may be any other government. For instance, in Kerala, there is that communist-led government, and in other states it is the Congress government. I am not going into all that. I think that we can discuss this matter as a matter of principle. Such appointments should be made by the judges of the high courts and by the judiciary itself. That is the main point that I want to stress in this connection. We have seen that not only the defeated candidates, but sometimes some active politicians also, whom the ruling party cannot otherwise oblige, are appointed as judges. There may be a good reason for doing that thing or not, I do not know. But such things do happen sometimes, and in fact, such things should not happen. It should appear to the country that the whole thing is being handled without any kind of interference or political prejudice, and so on. Now, I understand that they will not be willing to accept such an arrangement because they are not prepared even to allow the judges to settle the question of their own vacation. I can understand their difficulty because I know the frame of their mentality. But then that is not good, and in order to ensure integrity, this should be changed. Secondly, sir, I think there should be two types of appointments. One by direct recruitment from the bar, and another, of course, by promotion. Promotion is no doubt very important, but equally important is the direct recruitment. Now, today we talk about dynamic things. Yesterday, when the Prime Minister was speaking, well, science had been linked with matter. I do not know how things are being involved. Matter has been linked with the spirit. But here we are concerned with dynamic and social progress. Now, I think we should have a proper type of men for our bench. This is very important.